please come back? The excitement is about to start. We will talk about AI, next level though, just to be clear. I have the pleasure of asking to the stage Jeremy King, 𝗏𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗃, 𝗏𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗃, and 𝗦𝗏𝗰𝗃𝗍𝗏, please.
Here. Just have a seat here.
Split the ladies
Right.
up. Oh, those lights are bright.
Okay, so in the next, do we have a counter? 34.5 minutes. We will talk about AI very much in an applied sense when it comes to payments, fraud management, as well as using different channels to promote your product as merchant. We want to really take it to the next level and talk about some real use cases and applications and some lessons learned. We'll start with the good side and we'll end in the more challenging side. But let me very quickly, first of all, introduce myself. I'm Dr. Ruth. I've been in payments since 2003. And just listening to the previous presentations around open banking, I was fondly reminded when I authored the SEPA credit transfer rule book in Brussels at the time. So I've been in payments for far too long. But I'm also working across technologies, AI, cyber, and how all of this really relates to payments and financial services altogether. I'm more independent these days. I used to be at Citibank for a long time, as well as in Brussels, of course. And now I'm advising different firms, and I'm sitting on different boards, and I'm also a professor at university. Now, I'm going to hand over to each of you first to give a short introduction about yourself and some of your key perspectives on the topic, and then we start the conversation. So, 𝗏𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗃, you're next. Thank you.
Thank you. So nice to be here today. My name is 𝗏𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏. I'm VP Payment at 𝗏𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏. I've been a bit less than you, but almost 20 years in the payment ecosystem, managed fraud and payment on the merchant side most of my career. I really like the topic of AI. Before, when we talked about it, I said that managing payment 10 years ago meant for me to wake up every morning and try to see what went wrong yesterday, and then sometimes dig into it for hours until we really understood what is the problem. And some of this can now be handled in a few minutes with the new technology and with AI. In the past 5 years, I'm leading payment optimization at 𝗏𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏. 𝗏𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏 is a trust platform for e-commerce, so we help merchants with fraud, with payment optimization, and we actually use AI to make real-time decisions about understanding the identity of the consumer, as well as understanding what's the best thing to do to make sure the transaction is successful, and that the good customers will actually have the best customer service that they deserve. Along the whole ecosystem. So I'm very happy to talk here today about AI with my colleagues.
Yeah, Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeremy King. I'm the Regional VP for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for the PCI Security Standards Council. And this is going to be my last ever MPE because I'm retiring at the end of March. So this is my swan song.
Impossible.
Thank you. It's interesting that I came into the payments industry in the late 90s to start working on chip cards before they became into the credit card space. And it's interesting to hear that first keynote session to talk about the end of the chip card, and I was like, that's quite fitting. That is my life has been. But in terms of today, in terms of AI, in terms of PCI and security around AI, then AI is both the thing I think is fantastic because it's going to give us a great deal of help, and the thing that scares me the most. And it's interesting because when Dave Birch was saying, so would you put your hands up if you want to talk to a human, or put your hands up if you want to talk to a bot? What he didn't say was put your hands up if you don't know which you're talking to. Because the way AI is being developed, especially in the voice area, but more so in the visual side, you don't know. And you're talking normally, and a good AI means that's how it's going to be. It's not going to be the old chatbot where I was the other day, and it was like, which of these 3 topics do you want to talk about? None of them. I can't help you. You know, it's going to listen, it's going to interact, and that's fantastic. That's the fantastic side. The ugly side is the criminals are doing everything with AI that you're trying to do positively. It's not that they're not trying to, well, they will try to pretend to be you, but more so, they're using the data to be able to gain access to your systems, and we'll talk more about that.
Super. Laura?
Yeah, hi everybody, my name is Laura. I've been working for Douglas now for almost 10 years, so the European-wide operating beauty retailer. I'm responsible for everything that comes into your mind when thinking about the term B2B payment, starting also with the fraud prevention part. That is where my first touching points are with AI, lasting over finding the right PSP strategies, and also the in-store world that we are meanwhile responsible for as well. So finding the right terminal setup, also questions like cash payments, logistics, and everything that comes along with that. Yeah, and my first role with AI is, as said, you know, using the right tools to find the right fraud-based decisions, of course. I think that is a day-by-day challenge for all of us in the payment space. And also, you know, we as Douglas are trying to build up a new data strategy right now to serve our customers in a even more, in a better and more customized, we call it meanwhile hyper-personalization, so in a more proper way to really fill their requirements.
Great. And Davneet? Yeah?
Hello, everyone. This is Davneet. I'm working as a BFSI industry partner for Europe in ThoughtWorks, a software technology consulting company. The 3 key messages which I have for everyone is, the first is that AI is a strategic enabler for both customers and employees. At customers, it can enhance the customer experience with hyper-personalization, which is AI-driven hyper-personalization, and also for employees, where they can more focus on value-driven productivity in terms of focusing more on business value generation, focusing on solving customer problems, rather than the other unproductive areas. The second is, how can enterprises help the first goal in terms of giving the right ethical AI framework, giving the AI guardrails so that trust, security, and the way to approach experimentation and innovation remains. Third, and the most important point is that how can we ensure that data governance is in place? Because it's garbage in, garbage out. Your AI models are trained on data. If your data is not in right hands, you don't have right quality of data, your AI models are going to give you the same nonsense which we see it in sometimes chatbots, chat GPTs and all. Thank you.
Great.
Perfect.
Dwayne? Yeah.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗏. I'm a payment strategist at the Jeffrey Group. And I think for about the last 22 years, I've been on sort of like the both sides of the fence, what we're going to be talking about today. So I started in payments about 22 years ago as a data analyst, and I've sort of like gone through all of the roles. I have a master's degree in artificial intelligence, but I've also worked at key companies like Adyen, Checkout.com, actually building their internal analytics, but also their data science platform. So I've launched several fraud engines, several optimization engines, and so forth. And then I started a company called DataBright, which was a data science and analytics consultancy firm where we worked with merchants like Nike, Victoria's Secret, ASOS.com to actually help them leverage data as well as AI to optimize not just their checkout conversion, but everything from cost optimization, fraud on their platform. So I've been on both sides of the fence. I think we're now in just the beginning stages of this AI revolution as we're sort of like seeing it. I've seen a lot of talk already about LLMs and how they're impacting it, but I think that's only scratching the surface, right? We've seen the effects of machine learning, we're seeing Gen AI right now, but there's things like Edge AI and other aspects that are now coming into effect. So on this panel, even though I'm not at a merchant or I'm not at a specific payments company, for me it's much more to provide context as far as being a data scientist and being able to talk a little bit more into depth if we have to.
Great. Okay, so let's kick it off maybe with some hands-on examples of how AI can be effectively used today, We know that AI has been around for a long time. Machine learning, natural language processing is bread and butter, but keeps on evolving and improving itself. But maybe talking to you, Галит, first, what are, in your views, the best examples of using AI today? And also, how could you see in the near future that to make your life even easier?
Yeah, so as I said before, I think a few aspects really for your day-to-day if you are fraud and payment managers. So number one is monitoring everything around how you are doing, how is your KPI looking, what do you need to do to improve it, what's working, what's not working, from any daily dashboard that you wake up in the morning and actually shows you what's working, what's not working, and what you should do. I always wanted like just something to tell me, look, yesterday you have 1% of technical errors with processor A. We'll not name anyone here so nobody gets upset. Just check what's going on with the integration, right? And this is a lot of money. The payment ecosystem is super complicated. A lot of things are happening. A lot of things are changing all the time. So your ability to really understand what's working and not working. Also, I always had someone coming in and saying, hey, what happened yesterday in France? Like, the conversion went down. Is that because of you payment people, or is that the traffic that came yesterday? To have like a tool that will help you answer this question without sitting there for 4 hours and analyzing the data, I think that's super useful. So I think monitoring is number one that everybody today can start using. It's simple. There are a lot of tools out there. Number two is making decisions, and I will speak about it a bit more later, but there are a lot of decisions in the payment process that needs to happen from PSD2, 3DS or not. It's been 4 years, but it's still very hard to answer that question. So making real-time decisions, that's another one. And the last one is really to understand who is interacting with you. Is that a fraudster? Is that a legitimate person? And treat it accordingly. So that's for me like the 3 things that is already here today and can be leveraged by merchants.
Okay, cool. Just staying with the merchants, Laura, your experience at Douglas, what are the sort of most exciting, useful use cases that you use AI for today?
Yeah, I start with a rather merchant beauty side. You know, for us, it has always been an important challenge, but also something that is a must-have for us to be an omni-channel player. That is something we have been trying quite hard to realize for our customers. So indeed, we have our 25th anniversary this year with the German online shop. So actually, but of course, Douglas is coming from the classical retailing POS world. And since that point of time, I would really say so, for 25 years now, we have been trying to bring our beauty in-store services to the e-com world, and it's still hard, can tell you, because, you know, selling perfume and trying on makeup is such still, you know, an in-store world and an in-store happening and journey, a customer journey that the customer would like to have, and that is why we are trying to build up now this hyper-personalization thing and AI-based beauty advisors. That's how we call the people in our stores that serve you day by day when you enter our stores, and that is what we are trying to bring now together with AI-based solutions in our e-com world. So really to have someone, you know, that has all the data from that we gain from you as our customers, that we know you, and some guy then that guides you through the whole customer journey. So we are trying to really build up the same good customer experience like we have in our stores today in our e-com shops. That is the beauty retailer perspective, so to say, from coming from the role of being responsible for the payment and fraud world. It's definitely, you know, like you're saying, and I think maybe AI is somehow, for me, the answer to all this payment orchestration, multiple acquirer discussion that we are having now for years, I would say. You know, it's always like then when I discuss with providers that the greatest strategy, you will get back so much data to look at. It's always like that I'm answering, do you really think that a retailer like us has the time to check all this data? It's not you know, reality. It sounds so good that you're getting so many details about the soft soft and hard declines that you can look at, but actually, you know, there needs to be a different way that data is more prepared so that we can look at a glance, you know, into do our decisions based on this data. And this is something that we also work on, you know, to have this data more prepared for us so that we can really use this for our decisions in future.
Great. So really in the consumer space, you do have so much consumer data already, but you're not really making it work for you. So using that data plus that front-end engagement to give better prompts, sell more of the right products, and then again, learn from reviews and feedback seems to be this one ongoing personalization, hyper-personalization area, really to boost the sales. And the other one, as you both said, is really because there's so much data out there and so many decisions that have to be made on different data strands. First of all, making sure you got the right data feeds and having a model that allows you to make weighted decisions in the right way and give you also the prompts, okay, Lara, do you want to take this action now or maybe the other two actions which are a little bit less benign in step one? So giving you sort of prompts around your own decision making to still have that human override, because there's obviously this concern that when we go into AI, the computer decides, right? And we end up with computer says no in a simplified way. But having an informed way to be able to influence a model in an ongoing way to optimize it and still have that last decision-making word is, I think, critical. Now, Davnit, I know that you're very up for data governance and Giga and all those sort of things. How would you see that complementing the merchant world here?
So if you see it right now, we have seen organizations focusing on collection of data. But the reality is more data is not going to be equal to the more insightful data. It is about focus on data what you need. And that is going to generate more insightful outcomes. On top of this, we need to understand that data is very siloed in a lot of organizations, redundant data. So we need to make sure that we have quality data, the data on which we can trust, because ultimately the decisions are going to be taken on the basis of data. Whether AI models are going to do it, AI models are going to suggest it to human, but ultimately it is that data who is the foundation of it. Second thing is, on top of this data, which is quality data, we need to understand that, is it relevant data? So data is coming from various sources. We have seen the channels has increased massively over the period of time. But how we make sure that it is a relevant data for the relevant customer, so that on the basis of this, you can do hyper-personalization. It looks very easy to talk about hyper-personalization, but if you don't have the right data at right time for the right person, you will not be able to extract the actual benefit of it, right? That is where I feel it that retailers can take a benefit when you have the right structure in place, which is robust data governance. And then you will have an AI governance on top of it. Plus, we need to make sure that this data is protected properly. Security, protection of this data is of utmost paramount importance to us. As an payment industry, we need to focus on trust, scalability, and the trust of a customer. We can't play with that. That is the reason this data governance is very important, where we talk about responsible tech, we talk about ethical data, we talk about every aspect of how to govern this data effectively. That's all which I want to say.
Yeah, and I think this last point is really critical because we have so much regulation already in place around data security and privacy. We have AI laws coming through. We have cybersecurity legislation coming up. We have the DORA, Digital Operation Resilience piece, to how to manage your third parties and understand when they have a breach, which may alter certain processing or payment behavior of certain markets or segments as a consequence. So all of this, as you can see, starts to interact with each other. And I think this is where, if you don't use the right data, the right experts, and the right models and evolve them, you'll be stuck pretty quickly. And I think that's reflecting a bit of a sidebar coffee conversation we had a minute ago, where people are realizing you can't do this yourself. If you're a merchant, you're not an AI expert. If you're a payment processor, you're not necessarily an AI expert. So I think having the right expertise and knowing what problem you want to fix or what opportunity you want to enable is critical. So have that thought process and then look for the right answer, as opposed to thinking you can do this yourself, because there's no more way of throwing humans at this in an era of cybersecurity, non-resilience, to put it mildly. I think it's a very, very good point to make. 𝗬𝗍, you've been on both sides of the fence, as you said. What is your perspective as to how the market is actually at the moment going about AI in that merchant payment space specifically, and maybe with some analogies to other industries that you find useful?
Yeah. So whenever I talk to clients, merchants, or payments companies, I always say, look, there's three main things that everybody can actually achieve with AI. I call it either you're improving productivity, and that could be on your own developers. You're trying to come up with new features, new, hyper-personalization, all of those other elements. You don't have to invent the wheel because there's so much development already going out there. You can use OpenAI, you can use Claude, you can use all of these other APIs that you can have. But the goal should always be, how can I increase the productivity? That could be the productivity of your engineers, productivity of your customer service, productivity of your account managers, or even the beauticians that are normally providing all of that information online or even in store, where you can say, how can I help them do a better job? So I think that's the first thing that I always try to focus on, is that can AI be leveraged to actually increase the productivity? The second part is what I call optimization. Of course, being a payments data scientist, actually, my job was always, doesn't matter if it was an ad gen or a checkout.com, is that, hey, we got to outcompete everybody else. So how can we increase the authorization rates? How can we get lower costs? How can we reduce our fraud? So how can I leverage AI, and then not just LLMs, but machine learning, other techniques? How can I add them so that we can actually optimize what we're doing so that we can outcompete our competitors? So this then leads into other things like retry logic, acquiring routing, all of those other capabilities that you can leverage by saying, hey, if my data is actually at that level that I want it to be, can I collect all of that data? Is it clean? Is it governed properly? And how can I then feed it into my machine learning model so that the end goal is to actually optimize so that we can compete everybody else? But I think the one that we're oftentimes forgetting is actually the monetization and alerting aspect of it, right? Having AI is like having thousands of little agents that can go through your data and actually go find things. Like, it's been over 10 years ago, but over 10 years ago, we looked at bin monitoring things, like where we had an algorithm that would run every single day at midnight and go over all of our data just to figure out, hey, which issuing banks are not complying with like 3DS or are not performing at the level that we expect them to. But it's using AI in that sense where you can actually do it much more in real time nowadays. You have much more compute power, and you can actually have alerts. So instead of me looking at my dashboard and trying to figure out what's wrong, I can go about my day, I can do other things. But when something is wrong, the AI then actually gives me an alert on my Slack channel, in my email, sends me a WhatsApp message to actually say, hey, there's something going on, you should go look into that. So that's when I look at both on the merchant side as well as on the payment side, is that you can utilize that by focusing on those three things alone, and the productivity gains, the optimization gains, and just being able to monitor and alert your business can just propel so many companies into doing so much more than they're currently doing with very little investment and even very little development capabilities.
Excellent. So AI has lots of little agents working on your behalf, making your life easier. I think the productivity point has been mentioned so many times, and my worry always is, particularly with these, sort of large language models and ChatGPTs of the world, that people actually become more lazy because they're using it, and obviously it's, poisoned from the top, and it hallucinates, and it gives you really shitty answers sometimes. So what's the point there? But as you're getting people that are maybe not necessarily then using the freed up time for productive activity, you also need to do something with your teams and train people around how are we going to use these tools to make people overall perform better, to help clients more, and how can we make sure we don't fall into this, slumber, I call it, like, the metaverse slumber, where you're just sitting there and becoming a bit of a robot victim, really, right? Now, Jeremy, I left you at the last one to kick off maybe on the sort of slightly darker side, because we heard about some really good use cases, and I'm sure you can add maybe another one on top, but also what is maybe the slightly, how do we go to the other side? You started with the question, how do we know who we're talking to? We might already be talking to too many bots, right?
No, that's exactly right. I think there are so many things you can start talking about here on the darker side. I think one of the things is really, there are two ways sort of criminals are attacking us anyway now. One is they try and pretend to be us by stealing our credentials, and the other way is to try and gain access to your systems by inserting malware. So taking the second one first, I was just at a conference, an internal conference last week, and I was talking to one of my friends there who's a security geek. And he was playing with AI, and he was like, I wonder if it can write code. He says, I'm rubbish at writing code. So he went to this particular site and said, can you write me a code that will basically bypass all the security features of this particular aspect he was looking into? And AI came back and went, that's not legal. And he was like, good, I like that. So then he went, okay, AI, how can I write some code that will allow me to check that all of these parameters are going to be done in the correct way? Which is basically saying, can you write me code to break into this? And because he'd rephrased it to make it sound more technical, AI gave him the code. And he was like, ooh. And it took about 2 or 3 seconds for this code to appear. So it's like, okay, I'll run it. And it failed. And he was like, yes, it failed. And then he went, what would a criminal do at this point? AI, why did this fail? Well, you probably didn't set the privileges on this particular account correctly. So if you change the privileges, it'll work. Did it? Boom, he's getting all this information. And that is how the criminals are working. They're not necessarily trying to take you on as an individual. They're trying to find ways into your systems. Now, he then went on to the next stage, and I was talking to another colleague about this. Our software developers, and great respect to you all who are in the audience, they're basically lazy. It means if they can download code pre-written, they will, rather than write it from scratch. Now, the criminals know this. So the criminals are now starting to develop code to do certain simple tasks. And it will, but embedded in there will be a backdoor. Now, unless you read the code carefully and understand it, you won't see it's there. And it won't do anything. It'll just sit there. And so they put this out into the metaverse, and more people start using it, and then gradually it starts becoming more popular until lots and lots of companies have got their software, which does exactly what it says on the tin beautifully. But at some point, they will trigger the back door, and they're into your systems. And that's what they want. They get into your systems, and they can do one of many things. They can either steal the personal data, they can either start causing you ransomware attacks, which is painful, or they can start stealing your IP. Per any one of those 3. And that is one of the things in which AI is being used by the criminals. So then, how are you going to tackle that? Well, you use AI. If your coders aren't, doing a proper job and reading all the lines of code, AI can do that. AI can look at that and go, is there anything odd in this? Now, it'll take some training, but you can do this. Now, the other side, I'm sorry, long answer, is on the personal side. And already, all of us on this panel, because we're being videoed, and we've been videoed now for about 20 minutes, our face and all of our different expressions, whether we've been happy, angry, sad, you name it, because on this panel we've probably given it all over the last 20 minutes, that's been captured. The criminals, they need about 15 seconds of video, about 5 seconds of voice to recreate you. Go figure. So that's the challenge we face.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
I think that's a nice tee up, because I was wondering in the earlier presentation when we talked about the challenge of AI bots, talking to AI bots to make a payment in future. I mean, at the moment, we're still talking about secure customer authentication, improving that, and multimodal biometrics, and actually giving the banks the biometric data that's on the phone, which is with Apple, but who cares about that? And how do you have different geolocation and biometrical factors that you keep randomly assembling every time you authenticate or monitor to make sure that it is still me? Assuming that somehow they figured out it was me in the first place, which is, of course, too many fraudsters in the UK and elsewhere open accounts pretending to be different people with the same biometrical features, which is another thing to go through. But if we are in this situation and we enhance this to the next level, what really happens if actually AI can recreate every piece of me and put me back together in different ways, and therefore it doesn't really matter, have I got any security then at all? Or is it the multimodal random request to me? And how do I know that the channel towards me is not infiltrated either? 𝗬𝗲𝗳𝗲, do you have any views on this? Just because you're seeing so much in the data world.
I think overall, like, when we look at a lot of those challenges dealing with the upcoming fraud within this space, I think the one thing that we need to start looking at is, indeed, how do we start sharing and leveraging not just data, but also best practices, coming together. We see a lot of things like other conferences maybe that focus a lot more on risk, but I think it shouldn't just be at the conferences where we're saying, hey, this is nice. But, and I'm not a big fan of over-regulating things, but I do think that the best in the industry need to come together and actually say, hey, look, this is how we're tackling specific things. In the US, for instance, trends like APP fraud or just push payment fraud, elderly fraud, all of those things are happening at such a rapid pace. But they're getting together and actually saying, okay, how do we share this information? How do we go about the best practices? And then whenever they figure out something, how do we make it a standard? So how does that standard then become something that we all need to adhere to? I think PCI is one of those standards that we throughout the industry, I think sometimes on the merchant side, we might not love it as much. Sorry, Jeremy, but
okay.
It is something that we've worked together on where you see other parties then come in and say, hey, I'll take that risk off of your side, but this is the standard that I need to adhere to. So I think as we're going into this whole AI space and leveraging that, again, not a big fan of regulation, but I do think we need to start applying much more standards to it that people need to adhere to, that companies need to adhere to, merchants, but also the payments providers should come to, and also sharing maybe an open data framework as well as risk standards and practices that we can share together so that we can all look at what's happening, and especially the rapid pace that it's happening in, is how do we push that continuously? I don't think you need to have conferences every 3 or 6 months. I think it's every day or every week that you need to get, hey, these are the latest trends, these are the latest upticks, this is what happened at that company, not to shame them, but to otherwise give people the opportunity to learn from them and come up with solutions that we can then share.
Absolutely.
So the data sharing is a key one, and we've had this issue for so many years in the banking industry where banks are afraid to share data because they're not allowed. They always have to redo all the authentication, all the KYC. We're getting to a point where everybody figured that all the apps come from social media channels, so we need to get them into the camp, but equally having a panel here with merchants, we need the industry that is using the payment solutions to equally come together with financial institutions and social media to do it together. So I think this is a very valid point, and it's to do with actually making us join forces in order to have a chance. I think fighting fire with fire, if AI is used to attack you, you need to use AI to protect you, is the other big thing. Maybe just a few points from Laura around how this all happens within a team and in a business in terms of the human dimension. We've got 3 minutes left.
I will try to hurry up. I think from my experience, also as a people leading person, is that there's one thing to keep in mind when you work with people, with teams, they don't like change. And that is something really to keep in mind when you train your people. Actually you need to get, for me it's always like, of course we can talk about careers, how they will look like in a few years when not using AI completely. I think we all know that, but that is not the right way for me as a people leading person really to convince my teams. It's rather like you were saying, the productiveness that's getting better, so the decisions that we now can take with better quality, things that we can spend more time on, because the other things that we spend on time, for example, with analyzing data, is much less compared to the past. Really showing with examples how more effective and efficient we can be with using AI in our daily business. No matter if we speak about tools like Gamma when it comes to presentation, ChatGPT when it comes to building up our communication, of course fraud-based decisions. That is for me the right way really to convince the people, and that they learn how the quality rises with using AI.
So tomorrow we're going to talk about fraud and cybersecurity, and I'll give a bit of a talk on cybersecurity risk to go deeper into this last element of our session now. But let me now first of all thank the panel for an excellent chat, and we're going to move straight away into Galit, who's going to talk about AI in action. So big applause to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.